Right, episode 2, and we're talking about
Social acceptance.
So yeah, right. So the concept of what is socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question. Do I have one for that?
Well, let Stefan start. He's got.
Cool. So mine is to do with jokes. So when is it a good time to make an insensitive joke? Because it still is a joke, but if it's not intended to offend, when is it okay? It's like
When you're trying to make light of a situation, because if you can't laugh about something that's horrible, you're just going to cry about it. I think laughter is what makes things bearable, and it's how you overcome something. So if something's horrible to you, it's probably better to laugh about it.
I think that's a very negative situation, but I think Stefan's more fun to like a social situation when something comes
it's
up.
not just like if someone dies, it's sort of like something bad that happens. So
Okay.
So, for example, yeah, it's just like
I
when
think
you make your sexist jokes, your racist jokes, and stuff like that. If you do make them at all, my point of view on that is you do it around people who you know.
Yeah, I was about
So
to say.
if you've got like very close friends and stuff like that, and as long as it's like not in public, or if it is in public, like you're just like quiet about it because you don't know how
other people are going to react.
other people are going to react. I think it's perfectly fine to make offensive jokes as long as the people who you are offending are okay with that.
You're never going to know, so I think
You're never going to know, but
better to keep your mouth shut.
You've got a good idea though when you feel friends with them, like I said. You've got
Yeah, like, okay, I think the only time it's acceptable is in a friendly context, because even then you can risk offending said friend, but yeah, definitely, just probably best to keep your mouth shut, because you're always going to offend someone.
Yeah.
So like it's not always in the case if that someone dies, it's also like events that have happened.
Yeah, I guess if we're talking on the bigger spectrum as far as society, it's probably better just to keep your mouth shut if you're playing with an offensive topic.
See,
I'm guilty for an offensive joke.
Same.
So guilty.
This because I love them too much to not do them. It's not always the reaction I get out of people, but it's sort of like
It's the satisfaction of that crisp sting.
Yeah. It's like using the C word to offend people. Those people hate it, but that's the
I love the
beauty
C
of
word.
it.
See, like, this is why I deliberately mispronounce things, because it drives people mad. So, like, jalapenos.
Yeah, I still hate you for that.
What's another word you can mispronounce? I don't know, but just deliberately pronouncing things wrong drives people
You mean
mad.
like the train guy when he says Shrewsbury?
Shrewsbury.
That's one.
Yeah.
Which annoys me.
So, for instance, if I was going to make a joke about 9/11, somebody says it's too soon. When do you class as something to be too soon? No.
Well, that actually brings up Eminem's new song, doesn't it? When he mentions he takes piss out of the Manchester bombings, the Ariana Grande concert.
Oh shit.
Now, he made a joke about that, everyone kicked off, but people don't realise he donated so much money after that happened to that. It's just like, and I'm not saying donating money means you can take the piss out of people dying, but also he's obviously joking because he's put money towards it, if you know what I mean. But yeah, in terms of 9/11, I think it's one of those things. People do joke about it, and
You brought, like, okay, so that's given me an interesting question based on this. Like you just said with 9/11, that's something that happened in living memory. People who, when it happened, there are people still alive today that experienced it, still miss family members and stuff. When does it become, so something that fucking horrible? There's a few different things in society that are that fucking horrible. Some of us may not have even lived through it, so like the war and stuff, or any kind of war, any kind of horrible thing. When does something become culturally irrelevant to the point where no one? So like, as I say, there's people living today when horrible things have happened. It's significant to them. But when does it become culturally?
That leads to a question: is the sentence you've just said insensitive? Because you're saying lots of people died. When does that become not an issue?
I'm curious about.
Is that itself not insensitive? Because people dying is always a bad thing.
But it's not like we have
Emotionally attached.
Yeah, the emotional attachment to a topic because it's culturally significant. It's
But
not like we're remembering battles from like the 1800s and something.
It's not. But have you ever watched what's that program on BBC, like Who Am I? And it goes back through like a celebrity's past and like who they were, and they find out about their people who they've never met, and they end up getting emotional about it, and then they could have died in some kind of event, let's say like the Titanic, and then someone makes a joke about the Titanic, and they're like, that's not.
Yeah.
I find that quite offensive because I've just found out it's about my family.
Yeah, but what if they're the person who was always making jokes about people dying in the Titanic and find out one of their family members was on the Titanic when they died, and then they switch?
But if you switch, don't switch.
I mean, that's growth, though, isn't it? Because like that person who was roasting clearly is just in a state of entitled ignorance. It's a sobering thought when you then
No,
just
but
it's your
like I'm fine with it. Like so many people I've come across when people stutter in a conversation, like, "What's that? You having a stroke?" My dad died of a stroke. I don't care. Like it's a joke.
You can get away with that though, because you did. It's you
No,
hit someone in an emotional place, but then they can't pass your.
No, I didn't say it. So people around me,
Oh.
when like if someone stutters in a conversation, like it's happened a lot of times at work. Like you're having a stroke because people stutter, and it's like.
Okay.
So
I thought you were just
no,
generally talking about the
not
horrible
me.
jokes
Like,
you come up
other
with.
people said it,
Mhm.
and then I don't care. It's a joke,
Yeah.
and there's no need for that joke at that time. But also, I don't care if a joke's a joke, and I've made those jokes.
What about making fun of not specifically someone with a condition, but a condition in general? So, for instance, I like to do this thing. Well, not like I do this thing where if I see a video and then the guy on the camera is always shaking, I'm like, "What the fuck? He's got Parkinson's or something."
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like everyone's making coronavirus jokes right now.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then there's certain people of a Chinese background who aren't taking too lightly to that.
Mm.
Like certain students in University of Chester
Mm.
who have complained that everyone's treating them unfairly.
Please
So-
elaborate.
As in, like,
I don't know the whole story, but I know a few students who come from China and Chester have complained like people are kind of treating them differently and like treading eggshells around them and stuff like that.
that's just an unfortunate circumstance.
It is an unfortunate
It is.
circumstance.
People are just scared of what they don't really understand.
Hmm.
Like, for all we know, this coronavirus could just be nothing but some fucking bullshit. We've not actually seen anything.
There was a video I saw the other day where it was a woman on the train. It was a Chinese woman on the train with a bunch of luggage, and then the camera panned to two of the passengers sitting right opposite her,
Yeah.
and they were both doing that. But again, you don't know where this woman came from. She probably just been moving stuff from house to house. She's not come
Yeah.
from anywhere. You just being basically an asshole for the sake of being an asshole.
It can be perceived as being an asshole from that person's perspective because that's horrible,
Mm-hmm.
but it could.
You,
You're also
from a
being-
logical point of view,
You're being
you
very
could be-
cautious. Yeah.
You could be saving yourself from potentially being
Yeah.
killed. If
It's like washing your hands after going to the toilet. It doesn't mean you're going to get sick by not doing it or make anyone else sick. It's just you're being careful
Yeah, true.
because it like that's what I mean. It's just an unfortunate circumstance, which
But is an unfortunate circumstance acceptable?
Yeah, does it make it all right to do?
morals are subjective, good and bad. are
Because
subjective.
arguably you could say if a child is born into slavery, that's an unfortunate circumstance. The fact he was born into it.
I dare you to make a joke about that.
I'm not. I'm not. But I'm just saying that's an unfortunate circumstance. That person got born into a situation.
Yeah.
That doesn't make it okay.
No.
That's the point I'm going for. I'm not making a joke.
I think, yeah, you know what, that is a good point because I hate it when people are tearing into you and they, especially when they know things that bother you and then they start playing it, it's like, oh, it's just a joke, isn't it? And like you'll laugh it off, but then inside you're just like, I just want to leave. I think like a joke is not always just a joke.
Oh, I've
And
never
it can be used
experienced
as an
that.
Okay, so if you're going to talk about it that way then, so how would you depict a roast? So like someone's having a birthday and we have a roast to celebrate my
Yeah.
life, whatever, and they just pick at the things they know that are going to hurt you, but it's a roast. It's meant to be the point. Where does that sort of come to a line?
See, I'm not a big fan of that show for that reason. I
Okay.
think some of it's hilarious, like they pick on jokes and things like the person might laugh off because you've got to accept your flaws, grow from your mistakes, but
I think it
I
comes.
wouldn't personally do it.
I think it comes down to like one or two things. Like you know how people are kind of like invert, extrovert, and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
I think deeper than that, you can take jokes, you can't. I think people are built and they're either going to or not going to. I think that you can say whatever you want to someone and they'll be like, yeah, whatever. Or you'll say the littlest thing, people will be like, and eat at them a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem with what's acceptable in society. Every single person is different.
I think we can probably agree on that. What we all agree on is morally right and wrong. It's never okay to try and do something that is going to cause someone disharm.
So yeah, we all know morally right and correct. However, we're making a joke. I to go past those morals because when it's wrong with friends, it's not. They know who I am. I know who they are.
You know, actually, you've got.
Like I'm not a Tory, so it's all fine.
On a deeper level, as far as because a joke is you're raising a question. You are picking at society in a way. Yes, it's going to hurt someone, but then think there is always it's cause and effect, isn't it?
What you don't know,
do something, it has an effect.
Also, what you don't know can't hurt you though. If someone is making a joke about me in another country,
I think
like it.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's always going to hurt someone, but at the same time, I think everything about society, everything that people think, do, say, hear, should be questioned and held under a microscope, and that's, in a way, that is the job of a comedian. They identify something and then they try and twist it, whether it's in a way that people find funny, like funny in a painful way, a cringe way, or it's important, I think, from a societal point of view to pick apart everything, because otherwise then people just get away with everything.
Yeah.
Everything should be questioned. Like with ourselves, I think
we'd end up just like the Germans. No sense of humour.
Wow.
Okay, where do you
Someone's going to get offended.
Where do you think of this then? So you know how people are getting slacked in, for instance, for Kevin Hart when he was he fired from doing the Oscars, presenting Oscars, something like that. And then the reason is because they found a tweet he did back in like 2012, and like, you need to apologise for this tweet.
Yeah.
Where does the point of like you said that so long ago and you become a different person since, can you still be accountable for the things you did back then?
I watched that documentary on Netflix about Kevin Hart. Have you seen it?
No.
So there was a documentary that he did, and give him credit, what I liked about it was he put in the bad shit like that, the stuff that people had a problem with. It wasn't just like who's Kevin Hart. It showed the struggles and the growth that he's done as a person, and I think what people were telling him was, all you've got, you just haven't apologised. People don't feel like you're sorry about it. His point was, he just didn't want to have to give in to this culture of overly offended, which I quite dig, because it's like, it's difficult. So I think it was probably a mutual thing. He probably stepped down as much as they were trying to remove him. So I think I respect him standing by his guns, because it was always going to be controversial after you put something out like that. That's probably, and that wasn't even a funny joke what he said, because it was, if he caught his son playing with a Barbie house or something, he'd smash it over his head. And I think that's your opinion. That's less about a joke and more about you making a point.
I think as well, when it comes to that initial question, I think it almost depends on your age. I feel like if you make a joke like that and you're going for a job and you made that joke on Twitter when you were 14, there's a lot of things you're unaware with when you're 14 compared to when you're 23, let's say.
Yeah.
This is my point of growth.
Yeah, I feel like if it's like younger than 18 or something and someone's bringing it up, it's almost a bit like they are a kid a little bit, like they're not aware of,
they're still naive.
Yeah, they're still naive to the world. I think that's a big factor into it. There's a debate on which age you can take that from, because you can be fully aware at 16, but then just some people aren't.
I think that feeds back into the point I made about it's important to pick these things apart, because as a youth thinking, oh, this is funny, because we all grew up in a generation of gay was an insult.
I think it's important to pick it apart on an individual level, not as a society, because if you pick it apart as a society, there's always going to be a group which are having something wrong with something you've said.
Oh, of course.
Always. So I think it's good to pick it apart on an individual level, not because if you pick it apart on a societal basis, you won't be able to say anything.
But what I was trying to say though, like that youth seeing what was funny then, by people picking it apart and then making different opinions and different conversation, at a later age, he then realises the different perspective of what he'd said.
But that's why I brought in age, because when you're young, you don't do that. You don't look at yourself and evaluate yourself. It's only something you do when you get a bit more mature, which is why I think if you're tweeting about something when you're 14, you shouldn't bring that up. Like, come on, like, don't get me wrong, it might have been a really bad thing they said, but also that person has probably, you can always guarantee change their opinions in that time. Pretty much.
I think once something's said though, you can't really take it back.
You can't take it back, you can't take it back, but then at the same time, you shouldn't have to. You were who you were then, and you are who you are now.
Yeah. It's a different game though when you're like the Kevin Hart perspective. In that position of you are a presenter, you are an influencer, people care about you. I think. Yeah, I
don't know the Kevin Hart situation. That's why I find it a bit difficult.
I don't think this coming back from that, because once you've said that's out there, everyone
was he already like famous, and
it's more the fact that people are never going to actually meet you. They're not going to see the person you actually are. I think stepping down and just
fame's a different thing. I think if you're famous or got a large following, you then have to be more responsible and thoughtful of what you do. I think because the thing is, like, he might have that opinion, but not only although he feels like he shouldn't give over to this offensive thing, he's also reinforcing people who have that idea. So if there's like a really macho man who thinks people shouldn't be gay, and then the reader Kevin Hart tweet, whose favourite comedian, whatever, who's saying, if my son ever did that, like, haha, yeah, he believes what I believe. It's just reinforcing that wrong opinion.
Yeah.
For me, it's not a question about whether he should give up to the people who are offended and people shouldn't easily be offended. It's if you're reinforcing a negative, then you should. You should never reinforce a negative if you're the person who's famous.
It's a tough one because he addressed it and he said that obviously I'm not gay.
But from what you've said, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. He was viewing it from the standpoint, I'm not giving in to people who are overly offended, which is fine. I believe in that opinion. You shouldn't, just because someone's offended, you shouldn't change your opinion or even apologise. However, if it's something like that, you shouldn't reinforce a negative thing which has massive impacts on people's lives. Like Philip Schofield, he's only just come out as gay yesterday.
I didn't see. Apparently, that was on his Insta, but I didn't see it.
That's another thing I want to talk about. There's so many jokes about that already. So when is it still the point of too soon to make a joke? For instance, I saw a meme the other day. It was probably like a screenshot from a few years ago of This Morning, and it was a picture of Holly Willoughby turning like sideways with Philip Schofield sort of pushing her ass. And it's sort of like, don't worry, Holly, I'm gay. Sort of as the caption. And it's sort of like, is that too soon? Or is it still like in the fresh moment joke you can make?
Another question.
Like the situation.
Does that change from who it comes from? If a gay person made that meme versus a straight person,
people would argue yes, that would make a difference.
I don't think it does, because you don't know how Philip Schofield's going to be affected from it, if you know what I mean. Whereas if, I don't know, Holly said him that, he might laugh it off a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the fence like solely revolves around who's saying it. Yeah, because if your friend's saying it, it's fine. If it's someone you don't know, it's not fine, and that shouldn't be the case.
I guess it's sort of the point where like you can say you don't know me. So if you called me an asshole for this reason, and someone in the street called me an asshole for the same reason, like, you don't fucking know me, don't judge me. But because you do, but like, I get it.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas that's the thing about offence. I feel like you can only ever be offended by someone who you don't know. I mean, if I was to really go in on you guys for like a specific reason, or something happened, obviously I could offend you, but by most part, if having a laugh, in a way, it's from a joking perspective. If you're joking, like, your friends aren't going to get offended, and people you don't know are, as a rule.
I think I got to argue that, because I'm
in the majority.
Mm-hmm.
I generally don't give a shit what... Say if I don't know someone, I genuinely don't give a shit what they think, say, or do. I will walk off and ignore them, that's it.
Yeah, because you're not the kind of person to get offended. I'm saying the people who do get offended...
People I care about, though, will offend me. That's the thing. Because this is what I mean by when people deliberately use things and pick it and press on buttons that they know is going to sting. That's what bugs me, because it's like you put your faith in people that you then say, yes, I care about this person. That's the only time I'm really offended, is when someone that I've invested trust into plays with the power that they have over someone. Mm-hmm. If I don't know someone, you can call me whatever you want. I'll agree with you and walk away.
But
because
you are a special one though. Dan.
sound. It's easier to, it's just easier to agree with people, so that they'll shut up quicker.
I get that. Yeah.
What about the thought of getting offended on somebody else's behalf?
Ooh.
Maybe you just want to be heard.
See, the reason why I think of this is I watched a comedian a while back called Daniel Sloss, and
I love Daniel Sloss.
He's brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Carry on,
So,
sorry.
yeah, so he made a joke about he was doing a lead of jokes about his sister who had was it cerebral palsy? She was in a condition.
In
she
a
had
car
she-
crash.
Yeah,
I don't know. It sounds hilarious.
yeah, it's great. So
He's
he
not
was
gonna
talking
give us
about
credit.
the sister who was in a wheelchair. I think she had cerebral palsy or something really bad, and there was a car crash. And then he was talking about how his mum had to pick her up, but he explained it as in she had to pick up a wet pile of towels and then put her down. And some guy came running over. No, he's like saying like when people start laughing, it's like what you get offended for. It's like it's my sister. I know who she is. Like you don't have to get offended on her behalf. Anyways, someone picked up Raggedy Ann and they took her out the car, like just making these jokes. And then eventually he dropped the bomb that she died when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, now I know what you're all thinking. How can I just drop this bomb on you like this? But it's my sister. I've known her this long. I purposely wrote these jokes so that it would drop like this. You had no idea why you getting offended, sort of thing. And I really agree with that point, because if it's nothing to do with you, why do you need to take the feeling of this person gonna like that? Why are you saying that about them? How would you know?
Okay, I completely get that. If it's someone you don't, what about if it's someone you do know, but you know they're not likely to bring it up because they might be a bit anxious?
Okay, if it's an obvious thing of someone's sitting there silently in pain, then obviously you can clearly see that.
Yeah.
Speak up about it, but don't just let it happen. If it's obvious that someone's getting hurt of it, but if it's again his life story, him talking about himself and his sister who he knew very well, and he's making jokes of it to make light of the situation, why people get offended on her behalf?
Yeah.
Pity, because they don't understand it, but they know it's horrible.
Maybe.
So it's empathy. Maybe it hurts. Because
That
that joke's funny because it's horrible. Because it's like, but it's just like, oh my god, you went there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some experience. I've told you joke before. You know the one which Tyler said.
Yeah.
So, purpose. So just after my dad died, he came to my house and in a room full of friends. He was like, "What's the difference between me and Corwin? I've got a dad." And everyone in the room went,
Were you the only one laughing?
I was the only one laughing because I just found it funny. He knows you well, I know him. And one of my friends after came to me, I don't think you should have said that. I'm like, it's a joke, it's fine. So that's kind of the same thing. They were getting offended.
Daniel Sloss made the same joke with that. His friends at the time, dad died too, and then he went round her house to cheer her up and ordered the pizza from Domino's. Yeah. And then when it came with a bottle of Coke. Says, "Share a Coke with Dad." And she saw it. It was like, "You're a fucking asshole." It was like, first off, yes, but in this situation, why? And it's sort of like she just showed the bottle, and he just started crying of laughter because she thought that he planned it.
Oh right,
Yeah,
okay.
But he didn't. It's like, how much of a ploy would that be? It's like, "Hello, Domino's, yeah. Have you got anything with Dad written on it?"
Yeah, but I was just like, I don't know. I'm not easily offended, so it's even more as a thing.
A review question then. So, when is it socially acceptable to make light or a joke of a situation?
Always and never.
Always and never.
Tread lightly, my son. Don't be a prick.
Always be a prick.
Always. So, in moderation then.
I think it's about judging the situation.
Judging your audience.
I think that's the
Judging
thing. Be offensive if you want, but judge the situation.
And make sure it's a fucking joke.
Oh, yeah.
Don't just be hateful. Right. You got a question?
Things on very well. Should we have freedom of speech?
Yes.
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 So I can just go and call you the N-word? As a person who is your friend / doesn't know you / anyone in the world can go up to you and say that.
Too soon?
They've got the freedom of speech to do that.
See, I would say yes, but there will be consequences.
A fist in the face.
Yes.
So I share the opinion of you should be allowed to say what you want to say, even if it is offensive, because one, you can't educate people if they're not allowed to speak about something.
Mm-hmm.
Two, you just shouldn't. I think if laws get put on what you can and can't say, that's a very dangerous precedent to set. Like, you know, we talk about the offensive jokes. Some kid, I think he might have been 15, 16. He was either put on either got arrested to a young offenders for sharing a meme from Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
He shared one of their memes. I can't remember what it was to do with this. I think it might have been to do with Madeline McCann.
Okay.
Classic. He shared a meme and the police arrested him for it, for being offensive. Now, currently, that's not a law, so why are they doing that when people are still getting killed, mugged and robbed? But I'm not going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the actual crimes first. And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't necessarily... One, when it's obviously like a meme, it's a joke, something like that. Going on from our last thing, like, come on. But yeah, I do think, even though it might hurt a group of people, I think it's the only way you can educate people, by
Just
them
saying.
making noise about it. Otherwise, it gets pushed underground, it bubbles up, and I think that is one of the reasons of Brexit. People were kind of pushed down a little bit, like, you can't say this, you can't say that. So then all their hatred of certain groups just came out in little Facebook groups, and then that then reinforced. Where if it was openly discussed, openly spoken about, people could then be like, because often it's ignorance and fear
Mm-hmm.
why people have prejudice against other things. So I feel like without freedom of speech, you can't combat the hatred.
I've got an
Yeah,
answer,
true.
but you're going to have to bear with me.
No.
I think, like, all of this feeds into the same thing, like what we were talking about. So right and wrong, it's subjective. There's a balance. There are good people, there are bad people. For that reason alone, there should be freedom of speech, because even though in your bubble of what is relevant to you, you think you're right, there's someone over here that thinks you're wrong. So freedom of speech is this challenge where ultimately you should find a balancing point, or at least a point where people are comfortable enough to not fight over things. I think the answer to the question then is it's what's relevant to you. Everyone has an opinion. Every opinion should be heard. And in a democracy, yes, every opinion should be heard. If you don't like it, don't listen. But if you're not challenging everything, then anything could become, like, things that are horrible, if it's not challenged, could then just be the acceptable norm. So yes, everything, there should be total freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And I think people need to take it for what it is. It's
But
that person's just got an idea.
But then at the same time, like, this is what conflicts me about freedom of speech. If freedom of speech is fine, anyone can say what they want, but then it also means you can't have laws, in my opinion, like hate crimes, because they're allowed to say what they want. But then I also do believe hate crimes should be a thing at the same time. So, and that doesn't make sense. They're complete opposites of each other. You can't have one with the other. But I believe in both sides, weirdly. I think it's because I feel like there is a point. You can intellectually say, I don't agree with gay people, without calling them specific words and stuff like that. I think there's ways of wording it, so maybe you can have both.
Well, here's the thing, because words, we give meaning to words.
Yeah.
All words are made up. So your name's Corwin. That means fuck all. It is a vibration. It is a sound.
Yeah.
But it means something to you. So it's just what is relevant, because everything should be heard. Like your opinion in that, obviously, just making a point of what you said about gay people. It's this challenge of, yes, it should be heard, and people should just take it as like that person has an opinion. Maybe they just need educating, because it's like when you see people shouting about the Bible on the street.
Yeah, no.
Like they have a right to do that, whereas I have a right to stand there with a microphone and say you're wrong. That's a nice story.
I mean, you don't know they're wrong.
They don't know they're right. Well,
Absolutely.
They feel they are.
But yeah, so going back to that opinion of like freedom of speech and hate crime, stuff like that, I think it's acceptable to be like, I don't know, I need an example. Stefan, sorry, I don't like black people, and then saying you're N-word. I think that is a difference. I know that's actually not a difference. what's saying? Oh no, that's not a good example.
Yeah.
Okay,
Actually, no, it's okay. I feel like what you're getting with there. So saying something
There's
offensive
ways of
towards
saying-
that person, be like, oh, but I'm not racist because
No, not that.
So just love that.
Yeah.
I'm not racist, but
I've got a colour TV.
so like okay, like Brexit might be a good example. Lots of people voted for Brexit because they didn't like freedom of movement and lots of foreign people live in the country. So they could literally word it like that. I don't think we should have freedom of movement because it's bad for our economy or it's putting too many people in the country. Rather, I don't like dirty foreigners in our country. They all need to fuck off and go back to their own
Okay.
countries. That's probably a better example.
So the context and the way you say it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that might be the
difference
different.
between malicious and getting your point of view across.
Yeah, like having like freedom of speech and a hate crime.
the
If you're-
intention behind the word.
Yeah, I think that's where like the difference does come in because I do conflict myself with hate crime and freedom of speech.
Actually, that does remind me of one thing. Then I know you'll know about this one. Camp Dankel. Have you heard of him before?
Yes.
So the
yeah.
guy who made the Nazi salute video with his pug.
I was
No.
wondering if someone was going to bring him up.
Yeah, so I am strongly in the mindset of why the hell did that court case even exist in the first place? I mean, the context of the whole video was he wants to make his pug be the most unattractive thing for his girlfriend, and what's more unattractive than a Nazi? It makes perfect sense. So why was that depicted as a hate crime?
You heard this guy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I don't get how some people saw it as a hate crime.
Yeah, because he's not even reinforcing like a Nazi is a positive thing.
No.
He's just going, this is awful.
Interesting point that you brought him. I was going to mention him as well because you were talking about the police just going and arresting people for a meme. His life was changed significantly. So the police were, I'm not sure 100% on the facts, but I think some form of police harassment. He was taken to court. It was argued. I think they just wanted him to pay some sort of fine. But it's like all he didn't say, like he wasn't doing horrible things. He wasn't doing what Nazis do. He just made a joke. That's the argument.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are offended by a Nazi salute. I understand that. However, the premise on why he got arrested was bollocks. They were saying he was reinforcing
Yeah.
supporting Nazi beliefs, which completely isn't true. I understand why people are offended, but at the same time,
I
he
think
shouldn't have been arrested.
I think I found a good answer to your question. I think freedom of speech should be a thing. Everyone should be able to say whatever the fuck they want.
Yes.
The difference and where the line should be drawn is the intent.
And
Are
how
you-
you say it.
It's how you say it. So it's or it's what you do. So if you say, let's say for example, you're a cunt. That's my opinion. Or if-
cunt win.
But if I were to say like, I'm going to kill you, you're a cunt. That's different, and like you can play with that in different perspectives, but it's the intent.
Yeah.
I think that's where the line should be drawn because it's like
I think the easy one to get the point across is probably one I said about like people coming over like, oh, I don't really want people coming over here because for population reasons or just because jobs, whatever, which there's like some logic behind it.
yeah. So if we're talking,
Whereas she's like, I don't want dirty foreigners in my country. That's just wrong.
Hashtag EDL.
if we're talking different,
Yeah, like there's a difference between like EDL Brexit Party and I don't know, like if someone said, okay, we're going to close our borders because it's what the people wanted, kind of thing, as long as they're not going from a perspective of the EDL and Brexit Party.
So if we're talking difference of opinion from a perspective of racism, those people have that opinion. It's neither right nor wrong. That's up to us to decide. But it comes from a.
I know.
So
I don't think racism is either right or wrong. I think it is wrong.
Sure, but that's your opinion. Let me just finish the point because it's.
Go on.
So they've got that opinion, which is not necessarily grounded in fact. I think all racism and hate stems from a place of fear and misunderstanding, misinformation. So it's fine for them to have that opinion. If anything, it solves a problem by identifying somewhere where people need educating or people just have the wrong opinion because of what they've been told. Whether the amount of times people have come out with things and like, oh, this, that, and all they've heard is they're just repeating things they've heard off the news.
Yeah.
That is, I think, a good thing about freedom of speech. Like, those people are entitled to have that opinion because it means that they just don't understand. That's fine. They may never, but they're not going to go out and actually do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
They just have an opinion. That's fine. But it's when they go out and do something that becomes something real. Then that's a movement. That's people taking action against something that they have an opinion about.
Yeah, it's like me saying I hate all Nazis, but me sitting at home doing nothing. It's like I'm gonna go out there, find Nazis, and beat them to hell.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just.
It's like the kids on.
So it's maybe brought around an interesting point to stem on from this. So there's been a lot of conversations at the moment about social media, like Facebook groups, and how if there's like hate groups, it then takes an opinion and can often lead it to action. Do we think if a group is, let's say, it's apparent as racism, do you let that group then be functional and active, knowing it could be a problem, or do you shut it down?
Shut it down, but without.
But if let's say there's no violent intentions in that group at all, like let's say you've, as the police, you've looked at the social media, they are a racist group, but you like freedom of speech, they can have that opinion. Do you risk letting it escalate, or do you get rid of that?
It's never like when those things pop up, they're very heavily watched.
Yeah, so if there's no red flags, if there's nothing depicting there that they're going to cause any problems or anything like that.
So another topical point is the guy who committed the terrorist attacks on London on the weekend.
Yeah.
They were watching him from groups on Facebook, knowing he could be potentially a terrorist. Now, if they would have thought, we're not allowing freedom of speech, we're just going to shut this group down or whatever, it could have been averted maybe. We don't know. We don't know if the group was...
Counter-argument, without the freedom of speech, those people would have all stayed quiet and it would have remained underground, making it harder to track. So then it could have just happened and maybe more people could have got hurt. Without the freedom of speech, people remain quiet and hidden. But with the freedom of speech, these people with these horrible opinions, they bubble to the surface.
Yeah, I
and then
agree with that
then
point.
They can be
yeah.
watched.
I agree with that point, I think.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult one because there's so many different...
It's the same thing as prohibition. Prohibition of anything, alcohol, drugs. But let's say we use the alcohol one. You're told not to do something as a society. You're told you're not allowed to do this, but it's a thing. You know how to do it, you have to get it, and you enjoy it for whatever reason, you're going to do it. Same thing with freedom of speech. If it's absurd to think that you can stop people from, like, trying to stop people from doing something, that's one thing. It's never going to work, as history will show you. But if you're absurd enough to think that you can actually police people's thoughts and what they say, you're an idiot.
Literally go to the point of, you can say what the hell you want, but you're not allowed to say the N-word if you're white.
Is there like not a democracy almost either? And that's the viewpoint I go from as well. Like, I think you should, and it goes back into the jokes. You should be allowed to say what you want. However, I think you've got to understand there are consequences as well, and you need to say it. If you have an opinion which is a bit extreme, let's say, you need to put it in the right way. Because there's one thing having an opinion, there's another thing going out to purposely offend. If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I could easily say, I don't want foreign people coming to the country, but there's, you know yourself, there's much better ways to say it as, I'll get these foreigners out of the country. That's not my opinion at all, by the way. But yeah, you can absolutely word it in an intellectual way where it doesn't offend people. And I think kind
without offending people, how do you learn?
You can definitely learn without offending people.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even if it's never said, that issue, you're never aware it's an issue.
Growing up, I never had to call never had to be racist to someone to know what racism was and how it's offensive. You just know.
That's why education is so important.
Yeah.
If we think,
like, don't get me wrong, if you're in year 2 and you hear something on the TV, then you replicate that at school. You're in year 2. I'm sorry, but that's not a big issue for me.
Like, I was called a giant piece of poo when I was a kid, like in first school. So that person didn't know about racism at the time, but I'm guessing today they will know exactly what racism is.
It's like in school. Do you remember in Codswell Middle, someone called Kofi a cheeky monkey? Now, growing up as a kid in our time, all parents called their kids cheeky monkeys, with no racist connotations at all. Now, a kid would have heard that from home. Kofi would have done something which he would have done himself at home. Oh, you cheeky monkey. Whereas Kofi's like, what? that's racist. Because I feel like people who suffer from racism are educated about it way before people who aren't, who don't get objected to racism.
You've both made really good points. So here's my question: like with Kofi, like with yourself, it was the response of you, Kofi, getting offended that taught that person that perspective. Without having said it, the response of someone getting offended.
Yeah.
How'd you learn?
No, but
you'll never
no,
understand.
but your initial point was that can you learn it without being offended? Yes.
Oh.
I was never racist to anyone to understand it.
Well, no, because.
But I just knew.
No, but like what you were saying was your conclusion was after the person had been offended, the person then knew. So it's
for him, not for me.
Sure, but it's always after someone has responded to the comment.
But it's not always like that. The initial sort of the first ever racist comment would have had to have been that situation.
And then someone gets offended.
Absolutely.
And then that person.
But then that knowledge is passed on then from people educating other people.
But I think someone has to get offended. I'm going to stand by that because if you,
I think
especially as a kid, because you're told that's going to hurt that person. You're told their perspective, but as you don't know.
I'm quite good at learning from other people's mistakes, so maybe I see it differently. I'm quite good at looking at behaviour and being able to see what's happening.
Yeah, so you're learning from other people's, and it's sort of like, okay, for instance, imagine there's a whole community full of people who, I don't know how to explain it other than say don't know what racism is. So they're calling everybody any name under the sun. For instance, multi-range of races, and everyone's calling them nigger, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And then someone else comes into this community who knows what racism is, sees what's happening, goes, I'm offended that you guys are coming to this. Then they have to learn from that situation to then know to stop it.
I think trace it back.
Okay, if you trace it back to the first ever thing,
yeah, so it takes one person to get offended, one person to say this is not okay, for everyone to realise, learn from that mistake,
and then
not
people
do that
learn
again.
So from the initial inception of it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's like initial. Like it's when people use terms to describe someone, and then because like I grew up hearing adults say it in certain terms to describe certain people, and then I meet those people, and then they're like, no, that's not cool. They explain it. So there's the offence, and then you go, and then you grow as a society, and then that next generation then realises, okay, it's not okay to say that because this person has this attachment to it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so I think if we think, because like very broad perspective, like if we take ourselves out of our individuality and look at humans as like one big organism, like a virus that's all over the planet, it's learning together. We are connected more than ever. So like whereas before it would have been separate pockets of relevance, now it's a global perspective of relevance. So we're growing, we're learning as a society, as a species, where we say something, it offends someone, so we learn to navigate that situation differently, because deep down I don't think anyone really wants to cause harm to anyone.
No, no one does.
So that's it, we learn.
Well, some people do.
Yeah,
there's a percentage.
Well, some people are fundamentally broken.
Yeah, true.
And
very true.
are just projecting their own shit on how much they hate themselves onto others, I think. That's where hate comes from, because killers aren't made. Killers aren't born, they're made.
Yeah, true.
Or in rare circumstances, people are just born a little bit different.
Yeah.
So freedom of speech,
Yes.
actually a good thing.
Always.
Freedom of speech is a good thing. It's just knowing when and how to say things.
to vocalise it.
Yeah.
But if you go too far, we learn quicker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go around offending everyone.
Yeah. Just
So you've learned a good lesson today?
People educate me. Are you offended?
Going back is everyone now knows this is wrong. Thank you.
Until you get decked in the face.
Yeah.
What was the topic? Like, what was the start of it?
Social acceptance.
Social acceptance. Right. So that my question is a bit different then.
We can change that to society.
Well, my question was going to be then. The world is connected more than ever. All cultures are mixing in one way or another. Will there be a point where we all just come together and things change, so then it's just one culture?
Yes.
That's the goal in my opinion. That's why I'm so against Brexit. So the only reason people have prejudices and racisms is because a bit of land every now and again has got a different flag and a different name.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it as people in the UK with the football teams. They end up having fights because one team's called different and they've all got a club. It's what's it called?
Football reference.
It's there's a psychology term. What is it? It's in and out group. So the group you're in, if you're in like a group, you all have and you all share that one opinion or that one identity. You tend to stick together, and anyone outside you either don't like or don't want to agree with. And that's what's happened with nationalities and things like that. For us, we're England, we're Britain. Everyone else.
That's called mob mentality.
All mob mentality, in and out groups and mob mentality. Yeah,
Mhm.
it both one or two things. And I think that's what it is. Whereas why I'm so against Brexit, like the ideal goal for me is the European Union moves forward, and at one point there's no such thing as France, Germany, England, whatever. It's just Europe, and then there'd be like an overall language eventually. But this is obviously like thousands of years in the future kind of thing, where there'd all be like a language, and then there wouldn't be like, oh, they like the Germans because it didn't exist, so you can't have that question. Like, don't get me wrong, in this country we manage to categorise everything, like Southerners and Northerners hate each other. So there would be something, obviously, but there would be a shared identity which everyone could get behind. We could be like, we're all European. Whereas right now that doesn't mean anything. It's just we're British.
Could there ever be like we're all human, and everyone speaks the same language? Could everyone ever speak the same language?
Going on genetics, in thousands of years, theoretically there should be no white people because the black gene is the dominant gene.
Mm-hmm. But not everyone will be black. There will always be a mix. There won't be any like pure genetics, you can say.
Mm.
So no one will be like from there.
Are you saying black people is pure genetics?
No. Okay, so I'm saying wherever the original, this is going to sound really weird, wherever the original black person came from, wherever the original white person came from, Asian, whatever, there will be none of the original one. It's all going to be mixed, so you're never going to have, I guess you could say a pure breed. It's the really weird saying it. But
there would only be black people, because let's say you have like...
yeah, I guess it's a dominant gene. Like people are gonna, as soon as you put it into the mix, it's gonna get darker. I guess. But there never be anybody who's just 100% this, 100% that. It's always gonna be a flux, because there's in time there's no way, unless people are so stubborn and strict, that they won't end up breeding with another race.
No, but that's what I mean. But like obviously black's a dominant gene, so therefore even if there's like 2% of a white person, that will then go to 1%. And obviously there'll be more and more black people as time goes on, because it's a dominant gene.
Oh, so you think you just wash it out eventually?
Yeah, it washes out naturally because it is a dominant gene.
Okay, I get it, yeah.
I'm just thinking, because like obviously certain tones came about for a reason, like adaptations to more harsher weather conditions and stuff. Surely for that reason, if there are people living permanently in one part of the world, there'll be people that look a little bit different.
I think if you used to have a select family which lived in like kind of the northern hemisphere, maybe they might evolve a little bit over several generations, but the fact is, because everyone's so spread out now, you're not going to get one village of people staying in that one village of people anymore, because everyone can travel, like you said.
Yeah.
So like Norway's predominantly a very, very white country, because it's quite northern and stuff like that, and that's tend to where the white populations live in the world. So I think for that reason, then like they'd go down into a city, and then again they'd be more likely with people moving to cities to come across a different race, breed, stuff like that, and then that would all happen.
I could see people.
So evolution perspective, no. Like I think if you used to put took like a black family, put it in, and they were only to kind of get with people from that area, and they lived there, that family, that generation, like lived just in that segment for thousands of years, it probably would evolve, de-evolve, even though it is a dominant gene. But with how much everyone moves, no, I don't think that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's always going to be differences. There's always going to be, because there's just too many. Like, it's just how it works. I don't think you're ever going to get globally and stuff, like big perspective, I don't think you'll ever have a merger where there's just where everyone has where there's less differences between people. I could see people all speaking the same language, but here's an interesting one then. Like if we actually do manage to make it off planet, people are going to be like there'll be massive people, there'll be people with thick bones, better adaptations. That will like if you want to adapt to an environment.
It wouldn't, because we'd have to make the environment suitable for humans as they are now, so they wouldn't evolve to live on those planetary conditions because they wouldn't be living
There'll
in
be less gravity or more gravity.
Slightly.
Even if the weather's the same.
Slightly. So
There'll be different
It
lighting
would take
conditions.
a very, very long time though.
it would take
Unless you're genetically creating certain bodies, like fish people, but we're all of the same, like the same government. Like, you never know. What if you just like?
That's a
What if we see a nice planet? It's like, oh yeah, like it's sick, but there's no land, so we just tamper with, like we make mer people and shit.
we make
I don't know.
I'm just imagining, you know, those like mud skippers, but with Daniel's face on. Fish people. No, I get where you're coming from, but to be honest, I think we'll populate the planet too much in too short a time, and we'll all die out from overpopulation because everyone's too close together. We'll all have a fight and end up in a war and all die before any kind of evolution gets to a point where we're all fine.
Oh, you think we're all screwed?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Pretty
just a matter of
much.
time, to be honest. I think as things are progressing nowadays, it just sounds like we're a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, the population's growing that much over that short of time. It's we're more like because we're more likely to fight over no room for people and the population and such.
Do you remember what the point which you were going to make?
We were talking about how the world won't have time.
Oh yeah,
to
you
make
reckon
these
we're doomed.
changes. Yeah.
No, I forgot the point I was going to make.
Do you know about is it the Fermi paradox, where it's like, is there a point where a society can't go past? So it hits, say it's like venturing out in space, but is there a point where it cannot go any further, and it either kills itself or it just stops?
Oh yeah, I think there's a point it can get to where it will be the cause of its own demise.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say if
This is it.
someone's getting sacked.
What the fuck is that? Who leaves their phone in a tote bag?
Who's it?
Might be Nathaniel's.
Okay. Yeah, so whether it's the fact, let's say, people and countries all fall out because the population's too great and everyone's fighting over food and resources, and a country takes over another country to get their land to make food for their own country, and then it all kicks off into a world war kind of thing, or just
I fucked up. Coin's not in the wide shot.
or just the less economically developed countries
Yeah.
get taken over to support.
So the snake
War.
eats its tail eventually.
I think so,
But what's
yeah.
to say that during that situation, when one place in the world runs out of resources, the rest of the world won't chip in and help them?
No, but I'm getting to the point where there's no enough room for everyone. Like
when
it gets to the knife edge, the tipping point where to feed the people of your country,
you're
and
gonna
no
have
one's
to.
you're gonna have to.
Okay.
There's some sort of domino effect, and either the survivors or everyone's done.
Yeah,
And then it
kind of
repeats.
thing.
See, with that such a situation, then would the idea of a purge work?
Let's say, for example, then if you
The thing is, though, that's the thing. Like, yes, it technically would work. However, there's steps you can take before then
hang on,
to stop
Are you
it getting
saying
to that.
the purge in the movie form would work, or generally social cleansing would work? Because just letting the population go about killing each other, no, that would not work.
It would in terms of population
Huh?
How
numbers.
would you do it then?
Pick people off without them knowing, and then if people start asking questions, pick them off, and then just
It just
before people realise there's just a lot less people and everyone's a lot happier. And then no one questions it because they'll be like, well, I know what happened to Dave.
But the biggest thing stopping that right now is it's too offensive to say, going back to offending people, you can't have children, or you can't have as many children. People are, oh, it's my right. And it's their freedom of speech to say that. It's up to them, they do have rights. But also, why are people having families of 5 or 6 people? Why?
Because from their perspective, they don't see the problem. They're just doing them.
I know, but also, when is it going to come a question that population is potentially one of the world's... it is the world's biggest issue. And no one really talks about it. It's the same way, like, a lot of people talk about racism and people being homophobic to other people, but the real issue is, which is where I think racism stems from, is the classes. The classes is what also cause a lot of inequality in society.
Mm-hmm.
Class, I believe, started modern racism. So if you look at people when they were talking to slavery, everyone knows and basically associates that with black people. That was not the case at all.
No.
It was a lot of Irish people and Europeans in America. But what happened was, like I was saying, the in-out groups, the Irish banded together themselves, and they formed almost like a little mini revolution against the people who were kind of controlling them. Then those people were like, knew there was an issue, saw that, and was like, we'll come to an agreement, you guys can control the black slaves. And then that's when the class system started and racism started, because then it came a situation of colour stemming from that scenario. Because, and then the elite people who were the initial, like, kind of people who the initial problem, then were like, oh, we're above you, but we can, almost like, more like micromanaging, like, you can look after this group of people, then causing a tier.
I think you might have a point about that, but generally I think all forms of hate, especially towards others, it just all comes from a place of fear,
Absolutely.
misunderstanding. Because if you just dig
and
into
control,
it,
and control.
yeah, if you hear, well, it's people with no control over their lives who are then told there's going to be change. That's all it is. Because if you really listen to what people are scared of, it's like, we don't want people coming here because they're going to take our jobs. Even if you're unemployed, that scares you. Like, because it's just like you're being told something that is out of your control, you're scared. You may, and then like
Yeah.
if you actually meet the person that you're like that you have a problem with, you're probably more likely to find something in common and actually enjoy the person's company.
It's again, it's the in-out group. People look at it when they talk about it in terms of racism and jobs, as you say. This nationality is coming and taking our jobs, as you said, but they're just seeing it as a group of people, in-out group as us and as them. What they're actually not thinking about, as you say, is the individual. The individual's really nice, and that nationality doesn't have meetings on Mondays and talk about how we're going to take all the jobs in another country. Of course they don't. Like, do you know, it's ridiculous when you think of it like that. But it's the mentality in an out group kind of thing, which you're thinking, oh, those people they're going to take jobs, stuff like that. When in actuality, they're just people exactly the same as everyone around this table who are trying to make a better life for themselves.
Right, we've really picked apart this question. I forget what it was. What was it? Will there ever be a point where...
Yeah, we've gone off on a massive tangent.
Yeah,
We've gone back to the last few points.
The
original question was...
was it something to do, will there be a point
where society can't carry on?
Yeah.
Maybe we just...
No, that wasn't the question.
That was...
No, yeah,
that was
it was like, can go like no further.
I think what my point was going to be is when we make the big choice of abandoning what we've had to what we're going to go to.
Yeah.
That's when literally you can't go back.
Definitely.
So like literally like
We've
move
yet
the planet.
to find the impasse.
Or like a childbirthing policy to stop the population growing as quickly. And I don't mean that like China, because that's ridiculous and doesn't work.
But how would you do it?
Like I said in the last video,
I've
tier it.
I've remembered the question. The question was, will there ever be a point where we come together as a planet and there's one culture?
That was it. So then you said
Yes.
that at the point.
It's going to have to.
No.
There is. I think there is.
I think it'll get to boiling point and we'll fuck it before that happens.
See, I feel like...
I think that will happen for the last 2 months where most of the population...
World peace!
still being like, fuck. we need to all come together. We all come together, realise it's too late, boils over, and it ends up with 75-80% of the population going to shit.
Only 75, 80?
We have a lot of people everywhere.
Yeah, it's going to take something completely drastic for that to happen. But
Quite
I
a
feel
positive outlook for Corwin. Still got that 20% hanging.
But I feel like there's no way that, with the way people are now sort of like becoming a unity with communities and stuff like that, there was no way that.
You say this.
Yeah, but
are
the way it's growing, yes, but there's still those people who, it's gonna sound bad to say, it's still like the older generation is still like having a grudge.
Absolutely. Like a lot of people of our generation, we've all come together in terms of racism, in the majority, obviously, not everyone, in terms of racism, homophobia, things like that. However, we still not like that because of things like Brexit.
Yeah, but I think that's again down to people not being fully educated on what it is.
100, yeah,
And then
absolutely.
like if you know what a situation is, and then you can see that person's point of view, then obviously there's going to be.
I do genuinely think like everyone loves to look at their own generation. Like our generation is amazing, but I do genuinely think like our generation in the 5-10 years around are going to be the ones to have a completely different perspective on the previous ones and change the world for the better. I like to think,
but the way things have been,
we've got a lot to make up for.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, when you're at uni or college and you've got a month to 3 months to do an assignment, you leave it till the last day. We're the last day, like we're the last 24 hours. Shit, get everything done.
I like that. I think our generation are at least definitely moving towards trying to fix it,
But then I'm not sure if I have that perspective because I tend to surround myself of people with like-minded opinions.
So you surround yourself with people that think that?
Yeah, like we're quite positive people.
Yeah.
We're not immoral people, and that's because whenever we've come across people who don't share the same opinions and the same morals, like certain people we used to be friends with, we decide not to hang out with them because we're like, oh, actually, I don't agree with your opinions on life. When actually they could have a larger group of friends who we don't really know about because we don't hang out with them, and saying the exact opposite to us, but we don't know because we don't surround ourselves with them.
Freedom of speech.
No, exactly. So like you never really know until you get to that point, because we could get to 50 and it's the same thing.
I think it's
true. If you get what I mean, it could be.
This freedom of speech has definitely influenced it, though.
Yeah,
because the way people take to the street now and actually just say things.
Because people change their minds, and
an argument to that is even if you do hang around people that share the same like-mindedness as you, when we spend most of our lives on the internet, where you're seeing everybody's point of view just on a feed. You're always being influenced by that other random people. Yeah. You may not see them in person, you may not want to hang out with that person, but you're always seeing their opinions and stuff. So you're always getting that knowledge of what other people are thinking.
That's why on Facebook, and it's sometimes not good because people have called me out on the past actually. Have you heard of the Facebook page Britain for All? So it's like a positive page where like everyone should be included in Britain, basically anti-Brexit, like it's against Brexit party and stuff like that. It's like, oh, everyone should come in, like we're here to help people, like we're a good country. But at the same time, on Facebook, I also have Britain First liked. Because I don't like to have one opinion flowing into my head.
Yeah.
You need to be fresh, you need to know what everyone's saying to have an opinion. If you're just sitting in a group in a corner of people who all share the same opinion, that's going to rotate, reinforce. And even if it's a good opinion, you can turn a good opinion into a negative sometimes.
Yeah.
Even if it can be quite moral. So I feel like it's good to have a constant flow of non-biased information, and that means people should go out and like Britain First, Britain for All, have like the Tory party on Facebook, have Labour Party, Green, Brexit party, let's say, just so you can, because the thing, what's one of the worst things is you can have a biased opinion, even if it's the right one. You can.
At least
a biased opinion is a bad opinion.
At least hear both sides.
Exactly.
You guys have answered my question, I think, for me then. No, I don't think there ever will be a point where everyone's completely merged, because there is always going to be differences in opinion, culture, perspective, and morals.
Religion. I think there'll always be religion as well.
There will always be.
There's always
always.
That's a whole different topic.
Do you think new religions are going to pop up as well?
Yes, of course.
They're
popping up all the time.
I believe in God, but not God, not religious sense, not
Like
not
someone
God. Like
who made
Yeah.
anything.
because the only other option is infinite regression, which is it goes there was always something which was created by something else, and there's always been something which is impossible.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I think it's more that everything
I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about God. I don't like using God because people think of religious connotations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in religion.
A creator, basically.
A creator, yeah. But then what created the creator?
exactly.
Yeah.
So
There's always
it's like
that,
there's
yeah.
infinite regression in that aspect as well.
I
but-
think there's what's more likely to be the case is that because if you look around at what you observe now, each thing is
But-
part of a system.
yes,
one
but-
feeds into
but-
another. So
yes,
like,
but something created that thing which is God, even if it's a particle. That created something, the creator, God. Even if it's a particle.
no, I think it's just concepts that we don't even understand yet. Like,
So are you saying the universe as it is has always existed as it is? That means because infinite regression doesn't necessarily include the Big Bang Theory.
I think we don't understand the question yet because what is existence? What the fuck are we?
Well, we know
what
it-
is matter. What is energy?
No,
So
but
if
we
we
don't-
don't,
but we know-
but if we don't understand what that is, then we don't understand what started it. Then we don't understand what
No,
ends.
but we know we are us. Like I know I am me, so therefore I exist. And
Okay.
From that very simple question, you know, I have to be made by something. What created that?
Yeah, because you feel like
Even if you don't understand everything around you, you know you are you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have consciousness. So therefore, you know something created me. What created me? The logical aspect in your head is my mother. Who created grandmother? How did we get to here? So even if you don't understand all the various things around, you know there is a such thing as existence. And the question is, where does that come from? Has it always been, or did something start it off? I tend to believe if something started it off, which is God or the creator, whether that's a particle, an all-powerful being, I don't know. And I don't believe in religion at all. Religion's bollocks. But
You keep touching on that God concept a bit then.
no, I just I should say the creator.
Right,
I don't
yeah.
believe in God. It's just the word which I'm most associated with. Creator, creation thing, whatever, particle, being, whatever. I'm more believing that the fact that it's always been, because even if something's always been, it must have had a start point. You can't have a circle of always being. But then you could say that about the creation. If there's a particle which created, what created that?
What is time? What is space? What is reality?
Exactly. But we know we exist, therefore something definitely started it.
You know you exist from your
Own consciousness.
perspective of what you've observed,
Mm.
but you could just be a program that's been told to say or to feel that. That's
But then
Somebody in the Matrix.
but even if that's the case, but that's the thing, because I know I'm thinking, I have to be something which something created me. Either way, even if I'm fake and I'm not actually a person and I'm just some computer thing in an alien's computer game, I still exist.
And you have
Just not as
consciousness.
core, just as something different.
How would you guys feel if we put it in this one? Because like this is a whole other topic. This could be next
Okay.
week's. Like if we're talking religion,
Stay tuned for
existence.
next week's
Yeah.
episode.
there's a little pre.
I don't think religion would be a good topic because we all don't believe.
But it's the
Creation might be a good one.
You're at least.
Yeah.
You seem to be at least open to the.
No, I'm not open to religion at all.
Yourself.
but my family is very religious.
Re-
and sort of like
religion
I
is
have
used to
reasons
control
why I'm
people.
not.
Religion is a concept made by people to control other people.
Is this when we get someone in to talk with us?
Who is a religious that we know?
His ex.
That's literally the only person I was thinking of.
I think Emily Woodbury.
Just messages like, hey, you want to so we can roast you.
Hey, babe. Emily Woodbury, and she'd be a very, very good person.
She would
Come on.
be. I might ask her.
Okay.
Cool. Let's wrap it up there.
So what? So
You
what
got
was
Holly
the
Jackson on. She's heavily religious.
That's what we were just talking about.
Will she be easy?
My ex.
Easy.
Oh fuck.
You donkey. I
Think
didn't mean
about
that in a
that.
racist way.
Would that be taken as
I
well?
don't know. I said that. I was like, can that be? I was like, I'm just going to cover myself here.
Please let us know if you were offended by any of the topics of the conversation, and we'll be sure to learn from it.
Send it to